When one of the most famous men on the planet opened his front door at midnight and found his 71-year-old neighbor standing on the porch in a cardigan and house slippers holding a white envelope, nobody could have predicted what was inside it. It was Friday, January 17th, 2025, Orlando, Florida. Lake Butler Boulevard, a quiet street. The kind of neighborhood where the lawns are kept and the sprinklers run at 5 a.m., and the most noise after 10 o'clock is the occasional owl in the live oaks. Shaquille O'Neal had been awake. He was almost always awake at midnight. He kept unusual hours. He was in his study reviewing contracts when he heard the knock. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. He looked at the clock. 12:04 a.m., he opened the door. Gary Ellison, 71 years old, stood on the porch. He lived 4 houses down on the same street. He wore a brown cardigan over a white undershirt and plaid house slippers. His hair was white and short. He had a face that had been outside for most of its life, sun-lined, steady, the face of a man who did not waste expressions on things that did not matter. He held a white envelope in both hands. He said, "I am sorry for the hour." Shaq looked at him. Gary was not a man who apologized for things unnecessarily. Shaq had known him for 4 years. They had waved across the street. They had talked twice, maybe 3 times, about nothing in particular. Once about the oak tree on the property line that dropped too many leaves. Once about a stray cat that had been coming around. Gary was not a man who knocked on doors at midnight. Shaq said, "Come in." Gary shook his head. He held out the envelope. "I just need you to read this," Gary said. "Tonight if you can. You do not have to respond. You do not have to do anything. I just need you to read it." Shaq took the envelope. Gary nodded once. He turned and walked back down the porch steps and across the wet grass toward the street. He did not look back. Shaq watched him go until the darkness on Lake Butler Boulevard had swallowed him. He closed the door. He stood in the entryway of his house for 30 seconds with the envelope in his hand. It was sealed. His name was written on the front. Just his first name, Shaquille, in careful, old-fashioned cursive. He walked to his study. He sat down. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single-folded piece of paper, white, plain, no letterhead. Handwritten in the same careful cursive as the envelope. He unfolded it. He read the first line. He read it again. He put the paper down on the desk. He sat completely still for 47 seconds. Then he picked it up and read the rest. What was in that letter? And why it sent Shaquille O'Neal to Gary Ellison's front door at 7:30 the following morning is the reason this story has traveled to places Gary Ellison has never been and will never go. And by the time it's over, by the time every piece connects, you will not be able to read the first line of that letter without feeling something you do not have a word for. But to understand why that first line stopped him cold, you have to go back. You have to go back past 4 championships and a business empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars and a doctorate in education and all the arenas and all the names. You have to go back to a kitchen table in Newark, New Jersey in the fall of 1989. To a 17-year-old boy who had been drafted by a future that was not finished arriving yet, and a mother who had a question for him. Shaquille O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972 in Newark, New Jersey. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, raised him with a love that had a spine to it. Not soft, not easy, a love that asked things of him. That held him to a standard he had not always met and never stopped trying to meet. Lucille did not allow shortcuts. Not in behavior, not in character, not in the way he treated people. In the fall of 1989, Shaq was 17 years old and already one of the most recruited basketball players in the country. Coaches were calling. Scouts were watching. The future was loud and getting louder every week. One evening, Lucille sat across from him at the kitchen table after dinner. She looked at him for a moment. Then she asked him a question, 7 words. She said, "What kind of man do you want to be?" Not what kind of player, not what kind of star. What kind of man? Shaq sat with that question for a long time. He did not have an answer that night. He has been answering it ever since. Every decision he has made, every time he showed up for someone, every time he sat down on a hospital floor, or knelt on a concrete sidewalk, or drove past a pawn shop window and stopped the car. Every time. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, was a sergeant in the United States Army. Philip said, "The measure of a man is what he does when there is no audience, when the cameras are off, when nobody is writing it down, when the only witness is himself and God and maybe one old neighbor in house slippers at midnight." Shaq was 15 when he heard that. He understood it at midnight on January 17, 2025, standing in his entryway with a white envelope in his hand. Now, Gary Ellison, 71 years old. He had lived on Lake Butler Boulevard in Orlando for 19 years. Before Orlando, he had lived in Akron, Ohio for 41 years. He had worked at a rubber products manufacturing plant on the east side of Akron from the age of 22 until the plant closed in 2003. 31 years on the line. He had started as an assembly worker. He had ended as a floor supervisor with 14 people under him. When the plant closed, Gary was 50. He got a severance package and a certificate of service and a handshake from a regional manager he had never met before that afternoon. He drove home. He sat in his car in the driveway for 22 minutes. Then he went inside and told his wife, Marvella, that the plant had closed. Marvella had known for a week. She had heard from someone whose husband also worked the line. She had not told Gary because she had wanted him to hear it from them directly. She had made pot roast that night, his favorite. They had been married for 44 years when Marvella died. June 3, 2021, pancreatic cancer. She had been diagnosed in February and gone by June. Fast. The kind of fast that does not give you time to prepare, only time to be present. Gary had been present for every day of it. After Marvella died, their daughter, Celeste, 46 years old, who lived in Phoenix, Arizona, tried to get Gary to move closer to her. He said no. He said Marvella was in Orlando. She was in the yard she had planted and the kitchen she had cooked in and the bedroom where she had slept beside him for 19 years on Lake Butler Boulevard. He was not leaving. He stayed. He kept the yard. He kept the kitchen. He watched the news and read the paper and took his medication at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. without fail. He walked 2 miles every morning at 6:15. He waved at neighbors. He did not ask for anything from anyone. He had $112,000 in savings, a paid-off house, a 2018 Buick LeSabre in excellent condition, a pension from the rubber plant that paid $1,840 a month, Social Security that paid $1,090 a month. He was not rich. He was not struggling. He was a 71-year-old man living alone in a house full of a woman he missed every single day. He had one thing he needed. One thing he could not solve with savings or a pension or a paid-off house. His grandson Darius, 22 years old, Celeste's son. Darius had grown up in Phoenix. He had graduated from high school in 2021 and enrolled at Arizona State University in the fall of that year. He was studying electrical engineering. He was, by every measure, a good student. He was in his 4th year. He had 2 semesters left. In October of 2024, Darius called his grandfather, not his mother, his grandfather. He called Gary directly and he told him something he had not told his mother yet. His financial aid package had been recalculated following a change in federal guidelines. The recalculation had reduced his annual aid by $8,400. He had tried to appeal. The appeal had been denied. He had tried to find additional scholarships. He had applied for 11. He had received one. For $500, he needed $8,400 by January 31, 2025, or he would have to take a leave of absence. 2 semesters left. He needed $8,400. Gary had listened to his grandson on the phone for 40 minutes. He had asked questions. He had taken notes on a yellow legal pad. When the call ended, he sat at the kitchen table with the yellow legal pad in front of him for a long time. He opened his laptop. He looked at his savings account. $112,000. He looked at what remained of Marvella's life insurance payment, $14,300. He could write the check. He could cover $8,400 without blinking. He had the money, but Gary Ellison had a problem. He was 71 years old. He had a heart condition that his cardiologist, Dr. Renata Sims, at the Orlando Heart Institute on Millenia Boulevard, had been monitoring since 2022. The condition was stable but required medication and quarterly checkups and the avoidance of significant financial stress. Dr. Sims had used those exact words. Significant financial stress. Gary's out of pocket. Medical expenses over the next 3 years were projected at approximately $34,000. He had modeled this on the yellow legal pad on 3 separate evenings. If he gave Darius the $8,400, he had enough left for everything. The math worked, but only if nothing else went wrong. And Gary was 71 years old, and things going wrong was simply part of the arithmetic of being alive. He sat with this for 3 months. October, November, December. He did not tell Celeste. He did not tell Darius he was thinking about it. He simply sat with it and turned it over in his hands and tried to find the answer. In January of 2025, with 2 weeks until the deadline, Gary Ellison did something he had never done in his 71 years. He asked a neighbor for help, not for the money. He had the money. He asked for something else entirely. He sat down at the kitchen table on the evening of January 16th. He took out a piece of plain white paper. He uncapped a pen. He wrote carefully, in the cursive his 3rd-grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had taught him in 1961 in a classroom in Akron, Ohio. He wrote one question, 7 words. He sealed the envelope. He wrote the name on the front. He put on his cardigan and his house slippers. He walked 4 houses down Lake Butler Boulevard in the January night. He knocked on the door 3 times. Shaq read the letter at 12:09 a.m. on January 17, 2025, sitting at his desk in the study of his home on Lake Butler Boulevard. The letter said, "My name is Gary Ellison. I live 4 houses down. We have spoken a few times. You may not remember me. I have a grandson named Darius who is 22 years old and studying electrical engineering at Arizona State University. He has 2 semesters left. He needs $8,400 by January 31st or he will have to leave school. I have the money. I am writing to ask you this." And then the question, 7 words. The same 7 words Lucille O'Neill had asked her son at a kitchen table in Newark, New Jersey, in the fall of 1989. Word for word. "What kind of man do you want to be?" Shaq put the letter down on his desk. He sat still for 47 seconds. Then he read the rest. The rest said, "I am not asking you for money. I am asking you because I have been trying to answer this question myself for 3 months, and I cannot find the answer alone. I am 71 years old and my wife is gone, and my grandson needs 2 more semesters, and I have been sitting at a kitchen table since October trying to figure out what a good man does in this situation. I thought maybe you had thought about this question too. I am sorry for the hour. I did not know when else to come." Shaq folded the letter along its original creases. He placed it on the desk. He looked at the ceiling of his study for a long time. Then he called his assistant, Marcus Reed, at 12:31 a.m. He said 4 things. He said, "I need the financial aid office at Arizona State University. I need a student named Darius Ellison, electrical engineering, 4th year. I need to know exactly what he needs and how to pay it so that nobody traces it back to me. And I need it done before January 31st. Marcus said he would handle it." Then Shaq did one more thing that night. He took out a piece of paper from his desk drawer. He wrote a letter back to Gary Ellison. Not long, 6 sentences, he sealed it. He walked it 4 houses down Lake Butler Boulevard at 12:47 a.m. in the January night. He set it inside the screen door. He did not knock. He walked back. At 6:15 a.m. on January 18th, Gary opened his front door to begin his morning walk. He found the envelope. He opened it on the porch. He read it standing up in the cold morning air with the sprinklers running somewhere down the block. Shaq's letter said, "Mr. Ellison, thank you for coming. My mother asked me that question in 1989 when I was 17 years old. I have been trying to answer it ever since. I think the answer is this. A good man uses what he has to help the people around him. That is all. You already knew the answer. You have been living it for 71 years. Your grandson will finish school. Please keep your savings. This one is mine. Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Whether you are in Orlando or Akron, in Phoenix or Lagos or London, we read every single one. If this story moved you, Hit that like button right now. Share it with one person today. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting at a kitchen table with a yellow legal pad trying to figure out what a good man does. This story is for them. We will see you in the next one.